This is great!
Remakes, remasters, HD ports, whatever the case may be, they've been a great way of bringing some classic games to a brand new audience on modern hardware, while giving them the quality of life improvements they so desperately deserved, and even spawning actual sequels for some of these franchises as a result. But as we begin to make the transition out of the era of remakes, and with the amount of bigger, more well-known series getting the remastered treatment starting to slow down, I thought it'd be a good time to take a look back on this era and highlight the 7 best platformer remakes and remasters. Starting off with number 7, it's the 2019 remake of MediEvil on PS4. This is a game where the story revolves around Sir Daniel Fortescue, as he gets a second chance to stop an evil wizard called Zarek, who accidentally brought Sir Dan back from the dead in the process of raising up an army of the undead and various other monsters. Set in a world that's heavily inspired by The Nightmare Before Christmas, I can see why the series has gained such a strong fan base. Like many of the games on this list, the game itself is a major glow-up from the original, and it manages to come much closer to achieving that Nightmare Before Christmas look and feel compared to the original, while adding a few new features here and there. Now, I've only played the demo for the remake, which allowed me to play up to the game's first boss, and I gotta say, it was pretty fun, although I'm not sure if it's completely sold me on buying the rest of the game, given it's always on sale for a fairly reasonable price. I guess the reason for this is because the game still kinda retains the feel of a PS1 game in terms of mechanics, so I can see why people look at games like Pumpkin Jack as a modern successor to MediEvil, and what a modern MediEvil game could be like. Not gonna lie, it's still a fun game, and here's hoping the second game can get a remake as well. Just maybe with a few more tweaks to the gameplay this time. That'd be great. At number 6 is Ty the Tasmanian Tiger 2 Bush Rescue HD. As some of you are aware, I made a video recently talking about a new Ty game arriving in September for the series' 20th anniversary. So, this presents a rare opportunity for me to talk about the Thylacines' remastered adventures, all of which being made possible by some very successful Kickstarter campaigns, where Chrome's goal was to remaster the original trilogy of Ty games for PC via Steam before porting them to every other modern platform, while adding some much needed quality of life improvements like updated water graphics, shadows, 60 frames per second, replayable bosses, customization options, a brand new hardcore mode, which only gives you 1 life for the entire game. I have not tried this mode yet, but I am honestly scared to try it. And even adding an improved boomerang selection wheel in Ty 1 that's reminiscent of the second and third games, instead of having to toggle between the boomerangs using the D-pad, just to name a few examples. But aside from all that, these are still the exact same games as the original releases, and they're still just as fun to play as they were back then. But for the sake of time, I'm only going to focus on the second game, as Ty 2 was essentially the point in the series where it became its own version of Jak 2, minus all the darker, grittier tones. Basically what I'm referring to is the overall scope of the game, as everything is now one big, seamless experience. Instead of levels being divided by Crash or Spyro-styled portals in the first game, Ty 2 is basically a more Jak and Daxter-styled experience, with various doors scattered around the map that will take you to new areas to complete various missions, all of which are reachable via a vehicle, just like Jak and Daxter. Areas are filled with more things to do, kart races, helicopter missions, and new bunyip machines to control for different situations, in addition to the returning Cog and Bilby collectibles, which now have more of a purpose compared to the original release, as they now unlock customization options for both Ty and the 4B. What's that? Boss Cass is causing trouble again? Quick, to the invisible boat, the 4B. Yeah. that's what I mean. But jokes aside, even though this is pretty much the exact same game as the original release, I did appreciate all the extra stuff the team managed to squeeze into this remaster wherever they could, like the whale from Tai 3 and Crikey from Tai 1 being present, even 2 brand new boomerangs. The crafty ring, which isn't only cute, but it's also hilariously broken. Even though it's made out of popsicle sticks, it can still break metal boxes and easily deal with tougher enemies no problem. The cami ring, which adds a brand new photo mode to the first time ever in the series, which I personally have had a lot of fun with. Especially since you can use the photo mode settings to change the appearances of levels as you're playing them. That is honestly pretty cool, so why don't more games do this? So if you're looking for a good classic from the past and want to support indie developers, then I definitely recommend checking out the Tai remasters. You won't regret it. At number 5 is Sonic Colors Ultimate. Originally released as a Wii and Nintendo DS exclusive in 2010, the original Sonic Colors was a game that was always talked about as like the best Sonic game to ever exist. At least anyone who owned a Wii or a Nintendo DS would have been saying that, but not me, as I never had a Wii to begin with. And instead, I bought an Xbox 360, and I pumped in as much time as possible into Unleashed, Generations, and yes, even 2006. I made absolutely sure to get every single S rank in every single level, and also get every single achievement. I was that invested into these games, so it wasn't until Sonic Colors Ultimate released on every modern console as part of Sonic's 30th anniversary where I was finally able to play the game I was missing out on for 11 years. And it is by far one of the best Sonic games I've ever played. Yes, I've platinumed it, which is much more than I can say for Forces, so I can see why Colors got the praise that it did back in the day. Well, maybe except for most of the writing, as I think the series has seen better writing before and after the game's release.
Eggman, I am going to save this planet, and I am going to free these aliens. No copyright law in the universe is going to stop me!
Okay, I take it back. It's all good. Jokes aside, it was just so fun using the Wisp abilities to their full potential compared to Generations, which only provided a taste of what Colors had to offer. Easily my favorites were the Frenzy and Laser Wisps, as obstacles simply don't matter with these two. And just like the Tai remasters, there's quite a bit of customization options to choose from, ranging from Sonic's shoes, gloves, boost, and aura being completely customizable, with them being unlocked via new collectible park tokens. And just like CTR Nitro-Fueled and Spyro Reignited, you can swap between the original and remastered soundtracks per stage. It took them a few months to implement this, but it was really appreciated. The Jade Wisp from Team Sonic Racing was added to the remaster, which is a nice addition, and I can see why certain Red Star rings had to be moved around from the original to accommodate this addition. And you can even race Metal Sonic now, and that's pretty cool, as this reminds me a little bit of the Sonic Rivals games, except you cannot lose whatsoever. Why isn't on-foot racing more of a thing in the Sonic series? We need more. And while the game is a fun ride from start to finish, it definitely had a rough start, with various bugs being present across all versions at launch, with the more severe glitches happening on the Switch version. I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about, and for the most part, it has been fixed. I don't know if it was fixed completely, but I do believe they fixed it. And the few nitpicks I do have are pretty minor. One is that the cutscenes were not remastered for whatever reason. And two, S ranks are not awarded for finishing stages as fast as possible, like in every other Sonic game. Rather, they encourage you to do as many things in a stage as possible, like spamming the heck out of color powers before finishing them in order to get the S rank. and free, the levels often feel too short, segmented, and it just feels like you're staying in one area for far too long compared to the progressions seen in games like Generations, Lost World, Unleashed, and even Forces. But at this point, it's still a great game, and I think we have a much more important question to ask right now. Where's Sonic Unleashed, Sega? And at number 4 is Spongebob Rehydrated. Now, with the rise of licensed games making a comeback, with Insomniac's Spider-Man games and even Samurai Jack releasing in the past few years, it was no surprise that everyone's favorite undersea sponge would eventually join in on the remake bandwagon. This is, once again, pretty much the exact same game as the original release, but with a massive update in the graphics department and a lot more color being added to better match the aesthetic of the cartoon. Quality of life improvements have been made, like Patrick and Sandy now being able to do more attacks while in the air, as well as the ability to better combine and cancel out moves with ease. That kind of thing is always appreciated. The amount of references and Easter eggs have also been increased to better represent some of the more memeable moments from beyond the show's third season. Whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing, I'll leave that up to you, but it's the ultimate fan service regardless. So, with all these things in mind, you'd think that this would be the perfect remake, right? Well, after a while, some of the problems start to become really apparent. Other than the game's use of recycled voice lines from the original, some of the voice lines for when characters take damage are delayed. Like, they won't play until after finishing their currently spoken line, rather than immediately reacting. The smart camera, while it does a mostly good job at capturing the angles of the original game, it tends to be a bit weird with bosses. Like, it'll do sort of an overhead view of the Robo Sandy boss, making the arena look smaller than it actually is, but to get the original game's angle, you have to turn the smart camera off. And if you forget to turn it back on when doing, say, the prawn mini-boss, which is the perfect example of what happens when you forget to turn the smart camera back on, as it will not focus on the boss whatsoever, and as you can see, the results are not good. The entire point of why Mrs. Puff's rock bottom mission was so funny in the first place was completely botched in Rehydrated, which I've noticed seems to be a bit of a trend in recent remakes, but I guess the hilarious bugs do make up for it.
Wow! A promotion!
And I don't know what it is with the boss fights being tampered with as much as they were in this remake. Like, I understand speeding them up a bit so they don't take too long, but why did the game have to be so dang handholdy during bosses? Basically telling players exactly what they need to do in boss fights, which, as a longtime player of the original game, I found it to be really annoying, especially since it cannot be turned off. It's like they expected a vast majority of players to be really young and just starting to get into gaming, but at the same time, they made Robo Sandy and Robo Patrick less intimidating than the original, while somehow making Robo Spongebob even creepier. Oh, and before I forget, yes, the multiplayer mode is a thing. It's not very good, but at least we can play as more characters and see all the cut content actually be referenced here. I mean, at least it exists. I don't entirely know what happened behind the scenes. I mean, it was 2020, so we can't blame the developers that much for some of these issues. I just know that the game was really good despite these critiques, and that it was successful enough to warrant a sequel with the Cosmic Shake, releasing on all platforms sometime soon. And who knows, maybe the team at Purple Lamp will take some of these issues with Rehydrated into consideration for the Cosmic Shake. At number 3 is the Crash Bandicoot N-Sane Trilogy, released in 2017. Now this is pretty much where the whole trend of remakes and remasters began, which just so happened to be the same year Breath of the Wild created a domino effect for open world styled games. Talk about a trend-setting year, am I right? But can we really blame anyone for wanting to cash in on the nostalgia train and wanting to bring back dormant IPs in the process? Not really, because A, there is a demand for these older IPs, and B, the success of these remakes do actually lead to the first proper sequels each series has seen in years. Crash Bandicoot 4 It's About Time is a shining example of a dormant series coming back after a very successful remake. And that's all thanks to the N-Sane Trilogy, and of course the developers who brought us the N-Sane Trilogy, Vicarious Visions and Toys for Bob. The N-Sane Trilogy brought the original free Naughty Dog titles onto modern platforms with updated graphics, added time trials, and playable Coco in the first 2 games. The scrapped Stormy Ascent actually being released and fully playable without the use of a cheat engine, that is pretty cool, despite how hard it actually is. And trust me, do not attempt this level's time trial. It's pure pain. But what's not pure pain is the brand new level they created for Crash Free Warped, called Future Tense, and it is a blast to play through after finishing the game's story. Also, massive props to the developers for bringing back Lex Lang as Dr. Cortex, as he was easily my favorite voice for the character ever since he brought so much more to the character in Twinsanity, and continued to do so here as well as Crash Bandicoot 4 It's About Time. At number 2 is 2016's PS4 reimagining of the original Ratchet & Clank. Now this is a game that I've talked about quite a bit on the channel, especially leading up to the launch of Rift Apart last year, as a lot of people loved the game. Others, such as the longtime fans, didn't exactly care for how the story was structured compared to the original game, which I'm not going to get into for obvious reasons. Now, to be fair, this is a movie tie-in game, so the team was a bit more restricted on the story that needed to be retold, while somehow managing to keep most of the game's levels intact, and in some cases, merging them to fit within the game's slightly new narrative, all within practically 10 months of development time to line up with the release of the movie. So, with that in mind, it's not a direct one-to-one remake of the original game, unlike every other game on this list. Sure, some of the level layouts and enemies are exactly the same as the original, so longtime fans will be familiar with the respective areas and know exactly where things are. But there was times where I expected gold bolts to be in certain places, only to realize they've been swapped out with holo cards and moved to completely different locations, while other levels, like Gaspar, had completely brand new layouts to take advantage of the jetpack from Into the Nexus, combined with the more open areas from some of the later games, and even bringing over some of the other advancements the series has seen over the years. But even with all the positives in mind, and the fact the game now runs at 60 frames per second on the PS5, there's a consistently clear problem that's not about the story, or about the repeated reminders to buy a pixelizer, and that's the lack of polish to most of the in-game cutscenes, as characters just look so soulless, and even having unnatural, very nightmare-inducing mouth movements. And of course, we have the tie-in release of the movie to blame for that. But thankfully, it all worked out, as the game went on to become the fastest selling game in the franchise's history, which led to the release of Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart last year as a continuation of the story from Into the Nexus on the PS3, 8 years after that game's release. Now, if we can just get Sly Cooper 5 after all these years, that'd be great. Sony, what are you doing? And finally, at number 1 is the Spyro Reignited Trilogy. Now this to me is the absolute king when it comes to platformer remakes, remasters, and returns of long dormant franchises. As someone who's played the original Spyro free probably far more than any other game in my collection at the time, with most of that being spent trying to beat the game in one sitting because I did not have a memory card at the time. Oh, it was such a good time. And it was because of this lack of a memory card is what allowed me to better enjoy the game and experiment with every single playthrough to get through the game faster. That helped me to have a better connection to this series, even though it was my very first Spyro game. But then even more titles started popping up afterward, like A Hero's Tale and The Legend of Spyro Trilogy. Skylanders was pretty much its own thing that just so happened to keep Spyro alive in some form, and it also happened to be where Crash Bandicoot made his grand return, alongside his and Spyro's TV debut in Skylanders Academy. One way or another, none of them really felt like the original Spyro games, whether it be gems being infinite rather than limited, or a darker beat-em-up styled reboot. It's what helped make the announcement of the Spyro Reignited Trilogy so special to a lot of fans, because not only was my first Spyro game being remade, but also the other two games that I never got to play. All three being remade with updated graphics and brand new assets, even allowing Toys for Bob to take a lot of creative liberties with the character redesigns, Easter eggs, environmental details, and so much more. With some assistance by Insomniac Games, the developers of the original PS1 Spyro Trilogy, by providing Toys for Bob with the original design documentation. And what we got was a trilogy of games that excelled beyond what the PS1 was capable of doing, as Spyro's world just feels more alive than ever before. And it was great to relive some old memories, listen to some remastered music, and continue to hate Moneybags for how much more smug he is now. At least we can still chase and flame him as revenge, so that's great. I just wish they could have fixed his animations after we're done with the chase. Like, why are you smiling when Spyro just got done roasting you? I'm beginning to think you didn't actually retire to Spooky Swamp. Come back here and explain yourself, you greedy bear. But this is just one of the ever few tiny examples where things didn't get as polished as they needed to be for Spyro 3. Given Activision already allowed the game to be delayed by 2 months, and Sanzaru Games, the Sly Cooper 4 developers, had to be brought in so it could be finished in time for the new release date. Take Frozen Altars for instance, one of my favorite levels in the game, and it was kind of botched by 3 things. One is the hilarious sounds the enemies would make when getting zapped with a laser and eventually popping like a balloon. Yeah, that's no longer here. 2, the sound the snowman makes when shaking Spyro was switched out. And 3, this level was one of the instances where the voice acting wasn't quite up to snuff with the original.
I don't know why, but I feel really cold.
Purr. I don't know why, but I feel really cold.
All 3 of these things are what made the original level so much more funny and enjoyable to me, and it was kinda sad to see it done the way it was. Oh, and Spike was also super easy compared to the original for some reason. It's stuff like this is why I have problems with how remakes handle certain things. The perfect example being the aforementioned Mrs. Puff's rock bottom mission in Spongebob Rehydrated. But regardless of all these issues, it's been over 4 years since Spyro Reignited was announced, which was the very reason I started my channel in the first place, roughly 4 years ago. And honestly, it's a miracle that I even made it this far with the microphone quality I started out with. Are you excited to see Banjo-Kazooie return? Oh boy. And I have to give a huge shout out to Canadian Guy A, VT and VV, and anyone else doing Spyro content and speculating about a reveal before it even happened, because if it wasn't for you guys serving as an inspiration for me and my channel, then I probably wouldn't have even made the attempt at starting it up in the first place. And I look forward to joining that party when teasing for Spyro 4 starts ramping up. But after seeing the outstanding efforts the respective teams put into Spyro Reignited, I cannot wait to see where Spyro 4 will take the series. But before ending the video, I've got this one thing to say. about Reignited. Sheila the Kangaroo's design is awesome, and no one can change my mind on that. So anyways guys, those are the 7 best platformers from the remake and remaster era of gaming, which by the way is still ongoing, and I might make a part 2 of this video in the future, so if you want to stay tuned for that video, then be sure to hit that subscribe button and the bell for more content in the future, as well as the latest updates from the world of platformers. But what games were your favorite from this era so far? And which upcoming remakes, remasters, or reboots are you looking forward to? Be sure to leave everything down in the comments section below. And once again, if you stuck through the whole video, thank you so much for watching, and for the constant support these past 4 years, I really do appreciate it, and as always, I've been Blue Knight, and I'll see you guys back here next time.